After he had finished all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. Now a centurion had a servant who was sick, and at the point of death, who was highly valued by him. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent to him elders of the Jews, asking him to come and to heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they pleaded with him earnestly, saying, "He is worthy to have you do this for him, for he loves our nation, and he is the one who built for us our synagogue." And Jesus went with him. When he was not afar from the house, the centurion sent friends, saying to him, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore I did not presume to come to you. But say the word, and let my servant be healed. For I too am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes. And to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him, and turning to the crowd that followed him, said, I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such a faith." And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the servant well. So we're looking at Luke chapter 7, verses 1 through 10. And the things I hear as I read these scriptures, I can hear the waves of the Sea of Galilee as the crowd gets closer to Capernaum. I can hear the people whispering back and forth about the things that they're processing because of everything that Jesus is doing as they follow him. I can hear the commotion of the city, just as ours today, without the vehicles driving and honking, without the sounds of radios blasting and the ambulance wailing up and down the street. But, just the sound of people interacting with people. I can hear the groaning of the servant as he's in agony, and I can hear the sorrow of ones that love him. I can hear the sobbing of a soldier coming from a distant room, and it's quietly brushed to the side as he's not supposed to cry. I can hear the Jews as they are beginning to grow in number. They gossip and they plan about what they're going to do with Jesus. I can hear the comments being made under their breath that are being made by those noticing walls of separation being crossed. And they're like just dumbfounded. These things aren't supposed to be taking place in their city, but they are. I can hear a joyous sound that escapes from Jesus' lips as he marvels at the faith of the centurion. I can hear the celebration coming from the house of the centurion's home, from the friends, the master, and the highest pitched sound is coming from the servant that was healed. I do not hear Jesus condemning the soldier for being in war. I don't hear him telling him to quit because he's a sinner, because he's a soldier, that he needs to get a different job. That's what I don't hear. But what do I smell? I smell the fishy smell of Capernaum mixed with the fruity smell of the vineyards. As I enter the soldier's home, I can smell food that was prepared by servants from the last meal still in the air. I can smell the great contrast. As I walk through the threshold of the door, it's such a contrast compared to the smell of the city outside. The cleanliness of the home it's what awakens your senses to the smells that you never even knew existed on a day-to-day basis amongst the city. But once you walked into that home, it was just, it really heightened the sense when you walked back out of the rotten fish and the carcasses of the rotten fish carcasses that were unwisely disposed of, or just the different smells of that city that maybe weren't as noticeable unless you were just walking out of a home that smelled such as this home. I can smell the ointments that were used by the centurion or his servants to help the centurion, that unsuccessfully not helping. I can smell the sickness of death as I walk into his room. it smells mixed with oils, and it doesn't quite cover the scent of death. I can touch the sharp edge of the soldier's sword and the heavy armor that sits on the side. For this day is given for the master servant. He's not going to war. He's not putting on his armor. He's setting it aside. I can feel the touch of the Jewish elders as they come to Jesus and they touch him while giving their earnest request to their fellow Jew. They're coming and they're requesting with earnest desire for their Jewish friend or Jewish fellow believer. But the touch between the Jew and the touch that I can feel between the centurion that he has towards Jesus, the touch that he has concerning his servant towards Jesus, it's just as big of a contrast as the smell of the home inside of the centurion's home and the smell that you smell outside of the city, or in the city on the outside of the home. There's just a difference there. I can feel the mist coming from the ocean on my face as I watch the city of Capernaum, just stepping back and watching the whole city. They're being touched by Jesus, and every single one is being touched by him in a different way and trying to process it. And they really don't know what to think of it. But it's something amazing to watch. I can taste the good cooking in the centurion's home as it was prepared by the other servants. These things are made with excitement concerning taste. As I think of these servants, they must have been treated just as well as the ill servant. So it wouldn't be as if they were cooking for a master that they had to cook for, but they probably desired to cook for this master. They desired willingly to try and make things taste good for him because he was a good master. I can taste the bitterness of the Jews as they hear Jesus speak of the centurion's faith, as he says that there is no one in all of Jerusalem or all of Israel that has the faith of the centurion. I can taste their bitterness. And I can also taste and see that God is good and his love never fails. Nothing can separate us from his love, as I see this analogy of God reaching out to us despite this big separation between man and God, sin. I can feel the respect that the soldier has for Jesus as he's learned in his military time. He looks back and he's learned what respect was. He's learned to respect people because they were in a position that required respect. But he also learned that when that person that was not just in the position was getting the respect just because they were in the position, but that you desired to give them respect because of who they were as a person, how much greater is that respect? And that is the respect that he had for Jesus. The things that I see a moment of transition as Jesus is walking with all the crowds. And they'd been listening to Jesus, and it's all that they can receive at one time, in one setting. And it's in a place where they're in awe and contemplation, just to the point where Jesus is able to make this transition, this scene of transition from teaching the truth to walking in it. In Capernaum, Jesus, he begins to live out the things that he had been teaching that we see in the previous chapters. I see love. The love is Jesus, he continues relentlessly in the will of the Father. He's constantly being the source that is giving to the people. He is always the source, and he is the one that's doing the giving. Um, he's only stopping for moments of prayer and um, for time spent with the Father in prayer, as we've seen in the previous chapter on the mountain. I see Jesus appearing like the other fishermen in the city. He wasn't notable in his outward appearance, but as people saw who he was and they got to know him more, they were drawn to him. Everywhere Jesus was, you would see a crowd, and they would be following. And each one of them was for their own reason, but it wasn't because of his outward appearance. It's because of who he was. I see the love that the centurion has for his servant. And this was not the normal at that time in the Roman Empire, as servants had no rights then, and they were considered a piece of property. And just as a piece of property would be discarded when it was no longer useful, a servant could also be discarded, and it would be actually the master's right that he could kill his servant. And so I can see this relationship that's developed despite this wall of master and servant, and despite this wall of Jew and Gentile. I see these walls, but I also see this relationship that is being built despite of these things. I can see the crowd as Jesus enters Capernaum. The blue sea I see in the background, the water's filled with boats, full of fishermen, and it's a pretty small town, but there's a lot happening. People are stirring and doing business and buying and selling and doing everything in the streets. The street would be pretty busy day to day. And the ocean would also be filled with boats, fishermen. I can see the entrance of the city as disgruntled. I can see that at the entrance of the city, there would be some disgruntled people. You know, maybe I could see a disgruntled man. As I look at his face, and I see him speaking with one of the tax collectors, maybe in disagreement, paying taxes, travel taxes, or the tax that he would have to pay that was considered custom tax.
It's
That they would pay
22
at Capernaum,
hours.
as it was a place of crossroads. There was a synagogue on the road, and up on the hill, it was the highest point of the city. I could see the synagogue. I could see the Jews standing there facing towards Jerusalem. And they would be listening to their rabbi as he led the prayer. I can see one of the greater homes in the area, that is the one that was owned by the centurion. And I look inside and I can see one of the rooms is laid a very clean and well taken man, and well taken care of man. He's well taken care of, but he's wearing nice clothing, he's clean, but his face was ashen in color, with he's grimacing, showing his severe pain, and he appears to be near to death. It was a great contrast, another contrast in the text that we see. The cleanliness and the quality of the bed, the blankets, and the apparel worn by the sick servant and the others that were in the home, compared to the deathly look of this man. Though the ill servant and the master centurion were at opposing ends of their culture and religion, one being a Jew and the other Greek, I could see a difference of stature. I could not see a difference of stature that was seen outwardly, as the master treated his servant well. I could see elders of the Jews dressed in their robes with high-ranking authority and the large, stocky centurion meeting in a place not open to the crowds because of the nature of the meeting. But I can see respect between those in the meeting with genuine concern on their faces as they join for the same cause. The elders respected the centurion as he had showed favor towards the Jews by rebuilding their synagogue. And I see the respect that the centurion has towards the elders because of his servant, who he was, and on behalf of Jesus, because his desire was to honor Jesus in his place of authority. By sending these elders, as they were in high-ranking stature, he wasn't just going to show up himself as a Gentile or send somebody else that wasn't a Jew or that wasn't of high stature in the Jewish community. But he was showing respect, and he was respecting the authority of Jesus. I see the elders pulling up their robes as they ran with their concern for their Jewish brethren, but without concern for their appearance, as others watched as they were moved by this reputation that was carried by the ill servant. As the elders reached Jesus, I can see them, each one speaking at the same time, giving an urgent request with hand motions, all speaking at the same time. And I can see Jesus immediately moving the direction towards the sick man. That as he was dying, and as the crowd followed close behind, I can see the Roman armor glisten as it hangs in the place behind, looking through the window, sitting behind the centurion. He's concerned, but at the same time in his face I could see a spark of hope for his servant. I see Jesus coming towards the home, and the centurion, he'd sent his elders to Jesus out of respect, understanding rank and position and authority, as he himself was in that place of authority. So I can see why he would do that. And I can see that as the centurion looks once more out the window with hope, and he sees that Jesus is near, and he immediately, without thinking probably, gives orders to his friends as if they're under a part of his garrison, under his command. And he tells them to go out and to meet Jesus. And he does this, out of the rush. He's trying to respect Jesus, but Jesus is close. And so he responds with this to his friends. And so I see these middle-aged, stocky soldiers. They run out of the house, and they meet Jesus with smiles on their faces. And the crowd, they probably noted these smiles, as it wasn't a frequent sight that they had seen probably from the soldiers. I can see a humble face of the soldier when he looks out the window. It's a face that none of his 100 men that he had been leading had ever seen, as his position and authority over them would not allow that. I see a humble man, sincere in his respect for Jesus and his place of authority. And I see a felt separation in this relationship, as the master's place is a Gentile, a Roman Gentile, and a centurion soldier. I see that this separation that was in this culture that was supposed to be taking place, I see it failing. I see a relationship that's not separated, that didn't separate the centurion from his servant or the people of his servant. The centurion saw that the servant was different, and he saw that Jesus was different, or he wouldn't have built the synagogue for them. And it wouldn't have been said of him that he was a worthy man by the elders, that he He was just highly respected by them. I see the difference that gave the centurion faith in Jesus. I see what the difference is that gave the centurion faith in Jesus. And it was a relationship that was not separated by the centurion from his servant or the people of his servant. The centurion saw the servant was different. He saw that Jesus was different. And because he saw that difference in the centurion, or as he saw that, as he saw that Jesus was different, and as he saw that this wall of separation had no boundaries over the love of Jesus, that it was faith. It was faith, and faith was enough to know that Jesus he had enough faith to know that Jesus didn't even have to enter in his home. He knew that there was a separation, and that Jesus, as a Jew, should not enter his home, being a Gentile. But despite that truth, the centurion, he had faith. He had faith. And that's the difference, is that the centurion had faith. I see the picture being painted here that Jesus came not only for the Jew, but he also came for the Gentile. None of mankind should have Jesus visit our home. None of us should. We are not worthy. But by grace through faith, every one of us, we all, every single one of us are living in the days when the wall has been broken down, when we can come humble as a centurion. We can see Jesus not just as approachable, not just as entering into our homes, as the centurion's home, but making his home in us. I can see Jesus wonder at our faith as he wonders at the soldier's faith. If he wondered at his faith, it would make sense that he would wonder at ours when we show faith. The soldier saw that it did not matter who he was, and it didn't matter what he could do. He took his armor off, and it was what he believed in who Jesus was, and it was what he believed that Jesus could do, no matter who we are, no matter what gender, occupation, culture, or denomination. That is the faith that this soldier had, that conquered, faith that conquered this separation. I see the crowd looking at each other after Jesus told them of the centurion's faith, when he said, "This man's faith is bigger than any in Israel." They all had the same look on their faces. It was just as you would see a contestant on Jeff Foxworthy's show, just after they learn that they're not smarter than a fifth grader. It's just that same look that they would have, just like amazed, I finally see the dust settle as the crowd leaves. I see the centurion's friends hustling back to the home, questioning internally. In their minds, they're asking themselves, what do they believe about Jesus? And so it probably was quiet to them, on their way back. But if you could just hear their thoughts, I could just see their neurons in their brain just trying to process everything and asking, what do they believe? As they got to the home, I assumed that if I was there, I would see a door opening. And behind that door would be a glowing man He would be glowing out of joy, rejoicing as he had just been touched and healed by Jesus. I see a miracle that was done as the master sent for Jesus, because his servant that was dying, he was far from Jesus, but he needed healing. I see this analogy between this story and the touch that is impossible for man to touch, God to touch man. Because of the gap of sin, I see our master sending his son that healing could be possible. I see the touch of God then and the touch of God now that heals. And it's by grace through faith that we too are saved. And there you go.